police, stop right there. Hands where I can see them.
I didn't do nothing. I'm a cop, too.
Detective Reeves, Vice Division.
On the ground.
Now!
Check my credentials. I'm working undercover.
Detective Marcus Reeves, sir, slowly place your hands behind your back.
This is a mistake. I'm on your side.
We'll sort this out at the station. You have the right to remain
You're
silent.
making a huge
Call
mistake.
him right now.
I know Captain Rodriguez.
On April 17th, 2025, at approximately 7:42 p.m. in downtown Riverside, California, Officer Michael Jensen arrested a man who identified himself as Detective Marcus Reeves of the Riverside Police Department's Vice Division. What began as a routine response to a suspicious person call would soon unravel into one of the most elaborate police impersonation schemes ever documented in Southern California. The man in handcuffs was not Detective Marcus Reeves. In fact, there was no Detective Reeves on the Riverside Police Force. His real name was Marcus Hampton, a 38-year-old con artist with a 15-year history of fraud across 3 states. For the past 8 months, Hampton had been posing as a police officer to scam vulnerable victims out of more than $230,000. His sophisticated operation had managed to evade law enforcement until one crucial mistake put him directly in the path of the real Riverside Police Department. This dramatic report of deception shows how easily someone can pose as an authority figure. Subscribe now as our fictional series continues, revealing how clever police work exposed an elaborate criminal scheme that targeted dozens of victims with convincing but completely fake credentials. Before his arrest, Marcus Hampton had accumulated 17 complaints across multiple jurisdictions, but because he used different police department names and badge numbers, the pattern went undetected. The Riverside Police Department had received 3 separate reports of a suspicious officer in the weeks before Hampton's arrest, but with limited descriptions and Hampton's careful approach to selecting victims, investigators struggled to connect the dots. What Hampton didn't know was that Officer Jensen had recently completed specialized training in identifying police impersonators after a similar case in neighboring San Bernardino County. This training would prove crucial in the minutes following Hampton's arrest. The security camera from the convenience store across the street captured the entire foot chase, explained Sergeant Diana Mendez of Riverside PD's Special Investigations Unit. You can clearly see Hampton attempting to dispose of several items while running, including what appears to be a fake badge and identification card. Multiple angles recorded him trying to hide evidence beneath parked cars, which our evidence team recovered within the hour. As Officer Jensen approached Hampton that evening, he immediately noticed several red flags that triggered his suspicion. Hampton's police equipment contained subtle but critical inconsistencies: a badge with the wrong numbering format, a duty belt with mismatched accessories, and identification that didn't match department standards. What caught my attention first was his reaction when I responded to the suspicious person call. Officer Jensen later stated in his report, he immediately became defensive and tried to establish authority by claiming to be a detective. Real officers don't typically respond that way to uniformed colleagues. Body camera footage from Officer Jensen shows Hampton's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain his facade. Frame by frame, you can see the moment he realizes his story isn't working, notes Detective Sarah Coleman, who would later lead the investigation into Hampton's operation. He starts mentioning names of officers who don't exist, departments that are made up, and operations that never happened. What Hampton couldn't have known was that his arrest would trigger a multi-agency investigation that would ultimately reveal the true scope of his fraudulent activities. His vehicle, parked 3 blocks from the arrest site, contained a treasure trove of evidence: multiple fake police identifications, modified police equipment, and detailed notes on his victims and their vulnerabilities. How did Marcus Hampton convince so many people he was a legitimate police officer? And more importantly, what was he doing with his false authority that netted him over $200,000 in less than a year? If you want answers to these questions and to see how real police work outsmarted a seasoned con artist, hit subscribe and notification bell now to follow this investigation as it unfolds. As investigators began digging into Hampton's background, they discovered something even more disturbing. This wasn't his first time impersonating authority figures. Records from Nevada and Arizona showed similar schemes dating back to 2019, though never at this scale or sophistication. What had changed? And why had he chosen Riverside as his latest hunting ground? What do you think should happen to people who impersonate police officers? Should they face the same penalties as those who impersonate federal agents? Share your thoughts in the comments as we continue to uncover how the Riverside Police Department outsmarted this dangerous scammer. Within 48 hours of Marcus Hampton's arrest, Riverside Police Department established a dedicated task force to investigate the full extent of his police impersonation operation. What they discovered was far more sophisticated than initially suspected. When we executed the search warrant on Hampton's apartment, we found what amounted to a police impersonator's workshop, stated Detective Sarah Coleman in her initial case briefing. Professional-grade printing equipment for creating fake IDs, police procedure manuals, uniform components from 5 different departments, and most disturbing, detailed files on each of his victims. These files revealed Hampton's methodical approach to selecting targets. According to internal investigation documents, Hampton specifically sought out undocumented immigrants, elderly residents, and tourists, people who either feared real police contact or had limited knowledge of local law enforcement procedures. His apartment contained maps marking areas with high concentrations of these vulnerable populations. The defendant demonstrated remarkable understanding of police terminology and procedures, noted FBI Special Agent Thomas Rivera, who joined the investigation when potential federal charges emerged. Witness statements consistently describe him using proper radio codes, following correct traffic stop protocols, and displaying convincing knowledge of local jurisdictions. This was an amateur hour. Hampton's scheme typically followed one of 3 patterns, according to victim testimonies gathered by investigators. In the first, he would arrest undocumented individuals, then offer to look the other way in exchange for cash payments ranging from $500 to $3,000. In the second, he would approach elderly victims claiming to investigate fraud targeting seniors, then convince them to withdraw large sums for testing that he would subsequently steal. The third involved fining small businesses for fabricated health or safety violations, providing official-looking receipts for payments. "I really believed he was a detective," stated Maria Gonzalez in her victim statement. "He had the badge, the gun, even those police computers in his car. He showed me photos of people he said were arrested for not cooperating. I paid him $2,700 because I was scared of being deported." As investigators dug deeper into Hampton's background, contradictions emerged about his identity. Fingerprint analysis revealed that Marcus Hampton was just one of 7 aliases he had used since 2015. His actual name was determined to be Daniel Marcus Shepard, with a criminal history spanning 15 years in 3 states. The suspect's expertise wasn't accidental, explained Sergeant Mendez during a departmental briefing. Court records from Arizona show Shepard briefly worked as a civilian administrator for the Phoenix Police Department in 2017 before being terminated for unauthorized access to police databases. During those 8 months, he apparently absorbed enough information to create a convincing police persona. What turned this from a local case into a regional priority was the discovery of a notebook containing information on police personnel from departments across Southern California. This notebook, recovered from a hidden compartment in Shepard's vehicle, contained names, badge numbers, and personal details of actual officers. "This represents a serious security breach," stated Captain William Darrow in his testimony to the district attorney's office. Shepard had accumulated information on 23 actual officers, including their patrol patterns, shift schedules, and in some cases home addresses. This suggests he was potentially planning to expand his impersonation scheme or target officers directly. Body camera footage from 3 separate officers who had unwittingly encountered Shepard during his 8-month impersonation scheme was reviewed. In each case, Shepard had successfully convinced the officers he was an undercover detective from another division, even exchanging procedural information that seemed legitimate enough not to raise suspicions. What's particularly troubling, noted Detective Coleman in her case notes, is the suspect's ability to manipulate even trained officers. In one encounter from February, dash cam footage shows him convincing Officer Ramirez that he was conducting surveillance on a drug operation, even providing a fake case number that seemed legitimate enough that Ramirez left the area as requested. The investigation took an unexpected turn when financial records revealed Shepard wasn't working alone. Bank statements showed regular payments to 2 other individuals who remained unidentified initially. Surveillance footage from ATM withdrawals showed these individuals sometimes accompanying Shepard when he deposited victim payments. What do you think motivated someone like Shepard to impersonate police officers rather than pursuing other types of fraud? Is it about the money or something else? The investigation into Daniel Shepard's police impersonation scheme transformed dramatically on May 3, 2025, exactly 16 days after his arrest. What began as a local case of fraud and impersonation suddenly escalated to a multi-state federal investigation when authorities made a stunning discovery. We received an urgent communication from the FBI field office in Phoenix, explained Riverside Police Chief Monica Vasquez during a press conference that would shock the community. Fingerprint analysis conclusively linked Shepard to evidence from an unsolved armed robbery of a police equipment supplier in Mesa, Arizona, in 2021. That robbery resulted in the theft of legitimate police badges, identification card stock, and 2 firearms registered to the Mesa Police Department. This revelation immediately expanded the scope of the investigation. The FBI officially took jurisdiction under federal statutes covering interstate criminal activity and theft of official government property. Within hours, agents were deployed to 3 locations connected to Shepard's known associates. What began as a fraud investigation has now evolved into something far more concerning, stated FBI Special Agent Rivera in his federal affidavit. The suspect was not merely scamming victims for financial gain. Evidence suggests he was part of a larger network that has been targeting law enforcement resources and identities across multiple states. The most dramatic development came when federal agents executed a search warrant at a storage facility in San Bernardino rented under one of Shepard's aliases. Inside, they discovered what amounted to an arsenal: 3 stolen police firearms, body armor, tactical gear, and most alarmingly, detailed plans for what appeared to be a heist targeting an evidence transfer at the San Bernardino County Courthouse. The documentation recovered from the storage unit indicates planning for a potential armed robbery of evidence being transported for a high-profile narcotics case, stated FBI Special Agent Catherine Wong in federal court documents. Diagrams showed transport routes, security positions, and timetables that match actual scheduled evidence transfers. This elevates the case from fraud to potential terrorism targeting law enforcement. Within 48 hours of this discovery, 2 of Shepard associates were identified and arrested. Darius Carter, 35, a former security guard with access to law enforcement scheduling information, and Teresa Ling, 29, a graphic designer who had allegedly produced the fraudulent identification documents. Their arrests in Los Angeles and San Diego, respectively, confirmed the interstate nature of the operation. Body cameras from the arrests captured both suspects expressing shock that Shepard had been caught. Frame-by-frame analysis of Carter's reaction when informed of the charges shows clear recognition and concern, noted forensic behavioral analyst Dr. James Hoffman. His statement, "Dan wouldn't be stupid enough to get caught unless it was part of the plan," suggests there may be aspects of this conspiracy we haven't uncovered yet. The transformation from local fraudster to federal investigation subject happened in real time during a remarkable interrogation session conducted by Detective Coleman and FBI Agent Rivera. Security footage from the interview room shows the moment everything changed. "We know about Mesa," Rivera stated simply, placing photographs from the Arizona robbery on the table. Shepard's demeanor instantly shifted. After maintaining his Marcus Hampton persona consistently for 2 weeks of questioning, he suddenly dropped the act. "If we're talking federal now, I want immunity before we discuss Arizona," he responded, effectively admitting his connection to the robbery. "And now that mistake is costing him everything," explained District Attorney Eleanor Patel. By acknowledging his awareness of the Arizona incident, Shepard implicated himself in a federal crime that carries a minimum 15-year sentence. Had he maintained his denial, prosecutors would have faced a much more challenging case connecting him directly to the robbery. Within hours of this interview, federal prosecutors filed formal charges against Shepard under his true identity. These included impersonating a federal officer, interstate transportation of stolen goods, possession of stolen government property, conspiracy to commit armed robbery, and identity theft. Combined, these charges carried potential sentences exceeding 75 years in federal prison. What turned a skilled confidence man into the target of a federal manhunt was a single traffic stop and the training of one observant Riverside police officer. As Officer Jensen later testified, something just didn't feel right about his uniform. The badge was good enough to fool most people, but the placement of his equipment wasn't consistent with our training. That observation would ultimately lead to the dismantling of what investigators now believe was a criminal network with potential connections to organized crime. And for Daniel Shepard, the man who had successfully impersonated law enforcement for years, the game was finally over. Do you believe police departments should create special task forces specifically trained to identify imposters? How would you feel if you discovered you had interacted with someone falsely claiming to be a police officer? As the summer of 2025 progressed, the case against Daniel Shepard and his associates expanded into what prosecutors described as one of the most significant police impersonation conspiracies in recent history. The consequences of their scheme continued to cascade across multiple jurisdictions, affecting hundreds of victims and forcing law enforcement agencies throughout the Southwest to reevaluate their security protocols. The defendants' actions represent an unprecedented breach of public trust, stated U.S. Attorney Margaret Shun during preliminary hearings in federal court on June 12. Each time Mr. Shepard donned a police uniform and approached a citizen, he not only victimized that individual, but damaged the fundamental relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Court records revealed the stunning extent of Shepard's operation. Financial forensics identified 173 separate victims across California, Arizona, and Nevada who had paid fines, bail money, or processing fees to Shepard and his associates. The total exceeded $430,000, nearly double initial estimates. I've been a police officer for 22 years, and I've never seen a scheme this sophisticated or damaging, testified Captain William Darrow. The defendant didn't just steal money. He stole people's trust in legitimate law enforcement. We're still identifying victims who are afraid to come forward because they don't know which officers they can trust. The investigation expanded further when digital forensics revealed communications between Shepard's group and two correctional officers at San Bernardino County Jail. These officers, brothers Jason and Michael Delaney, were allegedly providing internal information about evidence transportation and security protocols in exchange for payments totaling over $25,000. The corruption extended into actual law enforcement, explained FBI Special Agent Rivera during his testimony. The Delaney brothers provided scheduling information for high-value evidence transfers, security rotations, and even building schematics. They have been charged separately with conspiracy and breach of public trust. As the case progressed to trial, victim impact statements painted a devastating picture of Shepard's methods. Maria Vasquez, an undocumented resident who paid Shepard $2,300, testified, "He showed up at my workplace in a police car with lights flashing. He said I was going to be deported unless I paid a special processing fee. I gave him my entire savings because I was terrified of losing my children." Expert testimony from Dr. Eleanor Chun, a criminologist specializing in police impersonation cases, provided context. What makes this case particularly egregious is the defendant's targeting of vulnerable populations. He specifically selected victims who would be reluctant to report their experiences to legitimate authorities due to immigration status, language barriers, or general distrust of law enforcement. Body camera footage from the arrests of Shepard's accomplices revealed the infrastructure supporting their operation. The graphic designer, Teresa Ling, had converted a spare bedroom in her San Diego apartment into a document fabrication studio capable of producing credentials that could pass cursory inspection. Equipment seized from her residence had an estimated value exceeding $40,000. Ms. Ling possessed specialized printing equipment typically only available to government contractors, testified Special Agent Catherine Wong. Transaction records show this equipment was purchased using cryptocurrency on dark web marketplaces specializing in fraudulent documentation tools. The cascading effects of the investigation continued when federal agents discovered connections between Shepard's operation and 3 other police impersonation rings operating in Washington, Texas, and Florida. Digital communications recovered from encrypted messaging applications revealed a loose network of criminal enterprises sharing techniques, equipment sources, and strategies for avoiding detection. We're witnessing the emergence of a new criminal methodology, warned Deputy Director Marcus Johnson of the FBI's Criminal Enterprise Division in his congressional testimony. These aren't isolated actors, but interconnected groups adapting sophisticated techniques to exploit the public's inherent trust in law enforcement. The Shepard case has exposed a vulnerability we must address immediately. For the Rio Riverside Police Department, the consequences included a complete overhaul of identification procedures. Every department in the region has implemented new verification protocols, explained Chief Vasquez. Officers now carry digital ID with encrypted verification codes that can be scanned to confirm legitimacy. Additionally, we've established a public hotline where citizens can verify if someone is actually a police officer. The financial consequences for Shepard and his associates were equally severe. Federal prosecutors filed for asset forfeiture of all properties, vehicles, and accounts connected to the scheme, totaling over $1.2 million in assets. Civil lawsuits from victims soon followed, with class action litigation seeking damages exceeding $5 million. The defendants' actions weren't just criminal, they were predatory, stated Attorney James Washington, representing 64 of Shepard's victims in civil court. Many of our clients depleted life savings, took out loans, or sold personal property to pay these fraudulent fines and fees. The financial damage is compounded by lasting psychological harm. Many victims now experience severe anxiety during legitimate police encounters. Perhaps most damaging to Shepard's defense was testimony from his former roommate, Kevin Ramirez, who had initially been unaware of the scheme. He used to practice police procedures in front of the mirror, Ramirez testified. He would record himself making arrests and then study the footage, critiquing his performance. He had manuals, training videos. He treated it like a professional career. As the criminal proceedings moved toward conclusion, the question that lingered in courtrooms and public discussions was simple. How much damage can be done to public trust in law enforcement by a single, determined impersonator? Do you think punishments for police impersonation should be more severe given the damage to public trust? Should there be a national database of police impersonators to prevent them from moving to new jurisdictions and starting over? On December 8, 2025, after a 7-week trial that captured national attention, the jury delivered their verdict on Daniel Shepard and his associates. The judgment was swift and decisive, guilty on all 27 federal counts and 14 state charges. Today, justice has been served not just for the direct victims of this scheme, but for every citizen who depends on the integrity of our law enforcement system, announced U.S. Attorney Margaret Chun on the courthouse steps. The message is clear. Those who impersonate police officers to prey on vulnerable communities will face the full force of the actual justice system. At sentencing on January 15, 2026, U.S. District Judge Raymond Ortega delivered the final resolution to Shepard's years-long impersonation career, 32 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, followed by lifetime supervised release. Additionally, he was ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution to his victims and forfeit all assets connected to his criminal enterprise. The defendant's actions represent a particularly insidious form of predation, stated Judge Ortega in his sentencing remarks. By cloaking himself in the authority of law enforcement, Mr. Shepard didn't merely commit fraud. He undermined the very foundation of trust between police and community that our society depends upon for safety and order. Shepard's co-conspirators received significant sentences as well. Teresa Ling, the document fabrication specialist, was sentenced to 18 years. Darius Carter received 21 years for his role in planning the courthouse heist. The corrupted correctional officers, Jason and Michael Delaney, accepted plea agreements in exchange for testimony and received 12 and 14 years respectively. For the real officers of the Riverside Police Department, the resolution brought both vindication and a renewed commitment to transparency. Officer Michael Jensen, whose initial observation and training led to Shepard's capture, received the department's highest commendation and was promoted to detective. This case fundamentally changed how we approach public identification, explained Chief Vasquez at a community forum following the sentencing. Every officer in our department now carries digitally verifiable credentials. We've implemented a text verification system where citizens can instantly confirm an officer's identity through our dispatch center. What Shepard exploited as a vulnerability has become a strength in our community relationships. The aftermath of the case prompted federal legislation. The Trust in Law Enforcement Act, transparent reporting and unified standards for trustworthy law enforcement, introduced in Congress with bipartisan support, established national standards for police identification, created a federal database of known impersonators, and allocated resources for public education about verifying officer credentials. This case exposed critical gaps in our system, testified FBI Director Eleanor Richards before the Senate Judiciary Committee. When someone impersonates an officer in Arizona, moves to California, and continues their scheme, local departments had no systematic way to connect those dots. The national database changes that dynamic completely. For Shepard's victims, resolution came in multiple forms. The court-ordered restitution fund provided financial recovery for documented losses. More importantly for many, the Department of Homeland Security issued special immigration consideration for undocumented victims who came forward, acknowledging their crucial role in bringing down a significant criminal enterprise. I was afraid to testify, admitted Maria Vasquez, who had lost her savings to Shepard's scheme. But the real police protected me, helped me get my money back, and now my family has a path to legal status. The difference between the fake detective who threatened me and the real officers who helped me, it changed everything I believed. The convenience store security camera that captured Shepard's initial arrest became an unexpected tool for police training. We now use that footage in our academy to show cadets what actual police impersonation looks like, explains Sergeant Diana Mendez, who oversees training for Riverside PD. Officer Jensen's methodical approach to identifying the inconsistencies in Shepard's equipment and behavior has become a textbook example of observational policing. Perhaps the most profound resolution came through community healing. The Riverside Police Department established a community trust restoration program, conducting hundreds of neighborhood forums where officers explained exactly how citizens could verify police identity and report suspicious encounters. This case could have destroyed trust between police and vulnerable communities, noted community advocate Roberto Sanchez. Instead, because of how transparently the investigation was conducted and how seriously victims' experiences were taken, it actually strengthened those relationships. People now know what legitimate police interaction should look like. For Daniel Shepard, the man who spent years pretending to be what Officer Michael Jensen genuinely was, the game ended in a maximum security federal facility in Colorado. His police uniform exchanged for prison attire, his counterfeit authority replaced with the reality of confinement. The irony isn't lost on anyone, reflected Detective Sarah Coleman in her final case report. Shepard spent years evading real justice by pretending to represent it. In the end, it was authentic police work, observation, training, community connection, and methodical investigation that brought down his elaborate facade. The real system worked exactly as it should. Have you ever questioned whether someone was actually a police officer? What verification methods do you think will be most effective for confirming an officer's identity during encounters with the public?